everybody doing? Come on, how you doing? All right, good. Excellent. I'm not going to talk at all about trash, so that'll be next year's TED Talk. Sorry, I want everybody to stand up. Go ahead, stand up. Good. I can't see any of you except everybody wearing plaid in the front row here. The hipsters came out in force. Oh, there's the house lights. There you are. You're beautiful. All right, so I want everybody to look at the person next to them. Pick the person next to them. Good. Come on, now I want you to turn around and face them. Not to get close. All right. Good. Now I want you to reach out and I want you to give them a big hug. Yeah. Oh. All right, now silence. Come on, class. All right. But honest to goodness, there was one guy right here in like the fourth row, didn't have anybody to hug. He was just like, he opened up his book, he looked at his notes. Boy, somebody give that guy a hug. Oh, there we go. Oh, good. Give him a big round of applause. That's right. Good. Now, I didn't have any reason for doing that. I just wanted to see if I can get you to do what I wanted you to do. I feel like I'm at a motivational conference. Have a seat. I've learned over the course of the past 4 years that it's good to laugh. I'm going to talk to you about poverty. And one of the things that I've learned is it's really good to laugh when you talk about poverty because it can get pretty deep, right? I've also learned that poverty is not the absence of wealth, that it's the absence of dignity, right? And I've learned all of that from an earthquake, a whole lot of yelling via text message, and from this guy right here. How about that guy, huh? That's one of my best friends in the whole world. That's Mark Noel Adame. We're going to get back to this picture, I promise. But for a while, I'm just going to leave it up there while I keep talking. I was playing dodgeball on January 12th, 2010, down at the YMCA here in Pittsburgh. And we had won our first and only match of the season. And we had gone to a bar, and we were celebrating. And as we were drinking, on the TV came Anderson Cooper, and he said that he had bad news, because he often does, right? That there was an earthquake in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, and that they reckoned about 300,000 people had died, and about 1 million people were left homeless. And I remember thinking to myself, like so many of us, how many people remember where they were when the earthquake hit? A couple, maybe, right? I remember like so many of us thinking every time we see bad news on the TV, my gosh, what a shame. You know? What a shame. And I woke up the next morning and I thought again to myself, what a shame. And I remember thinking then immediately after that, like, what a shame is the best you can do? Like, get off your ass, man, and go to Haiti. So at the time, I was in storytelling, right? I would work for a television production company for a while, worked for MTV, and I was here in Pittsburgh working for an advertising agency. And so I took my camera, I got on an airplane, I flew to the Dominican Republic, I got on a bus, I ended up in Port-au-Prince, and I spent a week there taking pictures. And I saw my first dead body. I heard stories that I'd never, ever dreamed of hearing before, each one more difficult than the last. And this is just a little bit of what I saw. And this was just about everywhere. Port-au-Prince is a city of about 4 million people. It's about the size of Philadelphia. They lost just about 10% of their population that day. And it was one of the most emotional weeks of my life. I took over 3,000 photos, and on the Sunday before I left, I went to church at a burnt-out old gas station in the center of Port-au-Prince in a neighborhood called Delma. And I remember the emotion from that entire week come pouring out when this kid got up to sing. And the only thing that was really striking about him at the time was that he had this enormous tumor on his face that he was dying of. And I only knew that he was dying of it because I asked somebody. And I got the chance to meet him not long after that, and he told me his name was Tassy. And on my second trip, my buddy and I had come back to take more photos, and it was in that moment that he asked me directly for help. And he didn't speak a lot of English. My phone is going off. Am I that guy right now? Actually, I texted Mark Noel before this to ask him if he had anything to say, so I've been waiting for a text message back from him, so we'll share that in a second. But he asked me for help. and in Creole, it's "Uka aide-moi." Can you help me? And not knowing what to say, I said yes. I mean, what are you supposed to say when a guy who stands directly in front of you asks you for help? So I came home and I immediately Googled it, right? Giant facial tumor, literally. That's what I Googled. I typed into the Google giant facial tumor. And we looked all over the world for hospitals that would do the surgery and a doctor that would do the surgery. And my friends and I got together here in Pittsburgh. We call ourselves the Team. Some of them are here today. We got ourselves together, we call ourselves the Team, and we raised as much money as we could to get Tassy up here to the States. And I was at a country club showing off my photos. We still hadn't found a place to bring Tass, and I gave my spiel. And after the gathering, I was talking to a guy at the bar, and he says to me, "Well, what do you need?" And I said, well, what I really need is I need a doctor that will do the surgery for free and a hospital system that will give it to us at cost. And he said, well, my name is Jeb Blaugren. I'm an ear, nose, and throat surgeon, and I want to do the surgery that's going to save Tassy. And we're going to give him a hospital bed and all the drugs he needs for free right here in Pittsburgh. So about 6 weeks later, my friends and I brought Tassy up to the United States, and so began the most hilarious sitcom of my entire life. He moved in with me and my roommate and my dog Buster. It was certainly full of ups and downs. I'm going to write a book about that part of those 14 weeks one day. Tassy comes in on the very first day. I'd come back from work to check on him. And I come into the apartment, and he's at the sink. And the entire sink is full of dishes from the dishwasher. And remember, Tassy had never been in the United States before. He lived in a house without electricity, and he had thought that the dishwasher was where I kept all the dirty dishes. And he says to me, I help. And I said, and it dawned on me that this was about to be something very, very interesting. I showed Tassy the garbage chute in my apartment, right? And he sticks his head down, and he looks down inside, and you can tell he's looking at me like I am absolutely full of shit, right? If we just put the trash down this hole, it's just going to disappear. I was like, yeah, that's about how it works, Tass. So we got Tassy figured out. They took a bone from his leg and put it back into his jaw. You'd never know he had surgery. In fact, here he is now. And we got the chance to take him home back to his mom. That's his mom, Lucy, back in Port-au-Prince. That day that we brought him back home was one of the best days of my life. I saw my dad cry for the first time. And Tassy sang, so it was kind of a nice bookend, to the whole experience. And I remember when he came out of church that day, he had sung, he loves sweater vests. My dad taught him to love sweater vests. You can see he's wearing one then. And that's in Port-au-Prince. It's literally 98 degrees outside. And Tassy, to this day, he wears the shit out of sweater vests. But he comes out of church that day, and he gets in the car, and somebody says to him, I don't remember who says to him, Tassy, that was beautiful. Where did you learn to do that? And Tassy goes, it's not my first radio. It's not my first radio. But we reinserted Tassy back into Cité Soleil. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, this was a great job. Look what a good job me and my friends did. And I realized at that moment that it was all about us, right? That it had nothing to do with Tassy. And that didn't seem quite right to me, because we were reinserting Tassy back into a neighborhood that was among the worst in the world. Tassy is certainly destined, in going home to Cité Soleil, one of the poorest neighborhoods in the Western Hemisphere, to a short and violent death. So we realized right then that we needed to stick with Tass until he didn't need us anymore. Right? And it caused us to ask the question as a group, what does it mean for a poor person not to need you anymore? And that was a rather simple but almost impossibly complex question. What does it mean for the poor not to need you anymore? And we realized that the answer to that is jobs. Right? The only way the poor are not going to need us any longer is if they get up and they go to work and they earn their own money every day. So the kernel of an idea began to form, and we stand on the shoulder of giants. So I came home and I started meeting with this guy. And if you don't know this guy, he literally, his office is literally 10 blocks from here. This is Bill Strickland. He started the Manchester Craftsmen's Guild. He's spoken at TED when TED was still a baby. And Bill believes that jobs end poverty. How about that? I got an expert right here in our hometown. right? And he told me, you can do what you do in Port-au-Prince the same way that we do what we do right here in Pittsburgh. And he also believes that the poor deserve beauty just as much as the rich. And that was something that hit home with me. The second guy that I looked to is a guy named Jeffrey Canada, and some of you might have heard of this guy. We were wondering then, we have all these people, how do we get the resource to put all the poor into jobs, right? How do we tackle that problem? It's seemingly an enormous problem. And Jeffrey's the guy that has the answer. Jeffrey works in New York City until just recently, he just retired, works in New York City, and he created something called the Harlem Children's Zone. What the Harlem Children's Zone does is they work in one specific area to end poverty. So in one 40 square block area to end poverty. And the third person that I look to is my own hero. I just emailed him for the first time 2 weeks ago, and I was like, I've been following you for the past 4 years. I sound like a stalker. And I have this question. He still hasn't gotten back to me. But his name is Paul Farmer, Dr. Paul Farmer. And we realized that we're going to work with the poor, we're going to place them in the jobs, we're going to do it in one specific area. I learned from Paul that we have to do it all the way, right? We have to stick with the poor all the way through, as if they were our own family members, right? As if they were our own brothers and sisters, nieces and nephews, sons and daughters. So this is where Team Tassy was born, right? The idea that working with them as if they were our own family members, we place the poor in one specific neighborhood into jobs. And we believe that if we can place 500 people in the neighborhood we work, Menelaus, Port-au-Prince, Haiti, that we can move the needle on poverty there. Now, we've already placed 12 people into jobs in Menelaus, and the results are promising. But at the time, right, this was still a brand new model. So there were a lot of other people that were coming to us with problems, mostly medical. This is Ruth Adme. She's our second Team Tassy kid. And this is her brother, Nathaniel. How about, they're the cutest kids in the world, aren't they? And this is their dad, Mark Noel, who I talked about earlier. That's Mark Noel with some of our fabric from Thread in our first product. He's a pretty smiley guy. But the Admes came to us through Tassy's brother's church. And when they came to us, Mark Noel came and he said that he had a daughter that had some problems. And we went and we met with them. And at the time, it was just me and a friend. And it turns out that Ruth was born without the ability to pee, right? Imagine that. Without the ability to pee. For the first 2 years of her life, she was reprocessing all of her own urine. So when I met her at about 20 months, 22 months old, she was close to death. Her kidneys had started to fail. There she is again. That's now, but her kidneys had started to fail, and we didn't know what to do. We thought that it was going to be as complex of a surgery as Tassy's. But as it turns out, we took her to a clinic in the Central Plateau of Haiti, and the doctor decided to try a procedure. And on the way home, Ruth peed for the first time. And for $10 and a free clinic visit, the gas that it took to get up to this little clinic in Las Cajobas, we realized that the poor don't lack resource, they lack access, right? This is one of the other lessons that we learned. But we wanted to test this model out that we developed, and we realized that the Admes were a good family to test it out with. So we decided to stick with them. And we learned that the Admes had 5 kids before the earthquake. They took on 3 more after the earthquake. Both Mark Noel and his wife had been out of work for years, and that we also learned that Mark Noel absolutely loves text messages. And he loves to yell text messages, right? Hello, Ian, this is Mark Noel, right? And you can see that every single text message that Mark Noel, he geared up in that one, right? Hello, Ian, this is Mark Noel, right? We learned that in every text message, he's very excited, but also very courteous, right? Thanks you in advance. Have a good day, in Jesus' name. He signs a lot of his text messages. I'm going to write a one-act play one day called Text from Mark Noel. But Here he is at beach day. We're back to this photo. So I began to develop this relationship with Mark Noel, and as it turns out, he was kind of an all-star in our group, right? We take everybody to beach day each year. We do our annual meeting at the beach in Haiti because we think that our families deserve a day at the beach. We work so often. So here's Mark Noel, and he showed up that day with a raft, and I don't know where he got it. And I was like, Mark Noel, well, where are you going with that raft? And he says, I'm going to America. Right? But after beach day that day, we asked for feedback on how Team Tassy was doing. And one person raises their hand and they say, we'd like more beach days. Right? And another person raises their hand and they say, can beach day be longer next year? Right? And we got back that day, we asked Mark Noel about beach day. And here's what he said. Many organizations come. The organizations change. Haitian people stay the same. They give you some food and they finish. They leave. Other organizations, they just food, not jobs. Give you some money, he forget you. Give you some food, he forget you. Give you some medicine, he forget you. They don't care what we do after. They don't care. You are different. Team Tassy is very different. You sit with our families, others don't. You respect your promise. My situation has changed. I don't know what organization that gives this. I don't find it. I'm going to text your staff. I'm going to pray to God for your staff. You can see the text messages. This is for me. When I pray to God for your staff, I pray for me and for my family. So, yeah. But this still doesn't have anything to do with jobs, right? So after all this, we asked Mark Noel, well, Mark Noel, what is it that you want to do, right? And he said, well, I want to be a driver. So what's that going to take? He said, well, it takes a driver's license. He said, well, how much does that cost? And he said, it costs $250. So we got him his driver's license. You can see here's the text message conversation. How's the progress for the license, right? The policeman he bribed a policeman to give him his license. The policeman give me my license. It doesn't work if you say it normally. You have to yell it, right? Great to all your staff for me, please. Very courteous, right? And then I said, good morning, Mark Noel. Thanks for the note. Are you available next week to do some driving for us? I said, I think we can test out this model on Mark Noel by having him drive for us when we come to Haiti. I usually like to drive, but we figured I'll sit passenger, ride shotgun, and see how Mark Noel does. So you can see he's getting excited, right? As you know, I'm available to drive for us. All my family are happy to meet you later. They're all coming, apparently, to drive. So we show up on the day of, and here he is on the day of. His wife put him in his Sunday best. I love the tie clip. And she cut his hair that day as well. I remember it was so hot that day. And Mark Noel was just sweating. He was so nervous. And he gets into the car, and the first thing I immediately realized in dread is that we had rented an automatic, and Mark Noel had never driven an automatic transmission before. So now immediately we're driving around Port-au-Prince because Mark Noel thinks that the brake is actually the clutch, right? He was just horrible. He was just a terrible driver. I can say that we only hit 2 people that day. And at one point, we were driving through the streets of Port-au-Prince, and he had run a red light, and I said, Mark Noel, that was a red light. And he goes, not for me. So we get home at the end of the day, and it came time to pay him. And so I pay him his wages, and he doesn't say anything. And he gets out of the car, and he walks into his house. There's a little gate. He opens the gate, and his entire family is sitting there waiting for him. They've been waiting all day to see how his first day at work had gone. And he walks in, and he says in English, tonight we eat. Your father worked today. That's the day when I learned that poverty is not the absence of wealth. That poverty is the absence of dignity. And that's an idea that I believe is worth spreading. Thank you very much.